Yeah, hello everyone. In today's session, let's try to understand about the life cycle methods of a class components. Yeah, so basically React has defined some set of life cycle methods, some set of life cycle methods. Okay, now this life cycle methods, if you define inside your component, if we define this life cycle methods in the class component, then whenever whenever your component is going to render, and during its rendering phase, at different time, this life cycle methods will be triggered by React. This life cycle methods will be triggered by React. So when the life cycle methods will be triggered by React, while your component is rendering inside your DOM. Okay, so as we know that our component have three phases. One is mount phase, update phase, and unmount phase. So whenever our component is in the mount phase, during the mount phase of our component, there are some set of lifecycle methods which are going to trigger set of lifecycle methods which will be triggered at different time while component is in the mount phase. Okay, same with your update phase. So whenever our component enters into update phase, whenever our component is going through update phase, so at different times, some set of lifecycle methods will be triggered. And same with the unmount phase. Now, in this lifecycle methods, we can define some logic. So that those functions will be called without triggering them explicitly. And our logic will get executed without triggering those methods explicitly. Okay, so here first we need to understand what are the life cycle methods. Like what are the different life cycle methods are available in different phases. So first let's understand about the mount phase. So in mount phase, there are four life cycle methods which will be triggered in a specific sequence. So first, let me list out the life cycle method. The first life cycle method is your constructor. So constructor comes under your life cycle methods. So life cycle methods are those methods which will not be triggered by us, which will be triggered by React. So whenever our component is in the mount phase, this method will be triggered. So constructor is the first life cycle method. Second life cycle method is get derived state from props. And this is the static method. So we have to prefix a static keyword. And third lifecycle method is your render. And fourth lifecycle method is your component did mount. These are the four lifecycle methods which will be triggered whenever your component is in the mount phase. And this lifecycle methods will be triggered in this sequence only. They will be triggered in this sequence only. It means first constructor will be triggered. Then your static get derived state from props will be triggered. Then render will be triggered. Then component did mount will be triggered. Now all these are not predefined functions. So basically they are predefined functions, but we have to override the logic inside these functions. Okay, so first constructor. So what is the use of this constructor lifecycle method? The use of this constructor lifecycle method is to initialize our state. So whenever in your class component you want to initialize your state, then it is recommended that you have to initialize your state inside the constructor. So constructor is all about initializing your state in the class component. Next one is get derived state from props. Next one is get derived state from props, which is a static method. Now this function is going to take, or this method is going to take two parameters. The first parameter is props, second parameter is state. Now this method will be triggered after the constructor. And the purpose of this method is to update your state, based on the props value. So whenever your component receives some data using props, and now that props you want to update inside your state, then that logic you have to implement inside the get derived state from props. If you want to update your state based on the props value, then that logic you have to implement here. So basically this function is going to return, this function will return one object. Whatever object this function is going to return, that object will be replaced in your state. That will be replaced in this state. That will be replaced in this state. Suppose if you don't want to replace anything in your state, then you can just return null. You can just return null. So if you return null, so nothing will be replaced in your state. But if you're returning some object from this function, then that object will be replaced in the state. Okay, so basically what you can do from this function, you can just return a props. So the moment you return the props, props will be updated in your state. Okay, so you can return that way, or else you can return your own custom object. Next one is your render. Render is all about creating the UI. It is all about creating the user interface. So here we are going to write our JSX code. So we are aware about it. Next is component mode. So in this function, you can implement all your side effects. You can implement all your side effects. So whatever side effects you want to do, those side effects you can implement inside this component mode. Especially network calls. Especially we are going to implement here network calls. Network calls. Or if you want to change the title of the page, then you can do that as well. Okay, I hope you guys remembered what are the side effects in React. So all the side effects you can implement in the component mount. Now these methods will be triggered only if your component is in the mount phase. So first let's see how these methods are triggered and in which sequence they are triggered. You can define in whichever sequence you want in your component, but they will be triggered in this sequence only. If you want, you can define these methods in any sequence, but this will be triggered in this sequence only. First constructor, then get derived state from props, render, component mount. Okay, so let's try this. Let's try this. So for this, what I'm doing here, I have created one class component. Okay, I have created one class component. In this class component, I have rendered one H2 element, one paragraph, and one button. So in this component, I have one H2 JSX element, one paragraph, and one button. Okay. Now my requirement is the moment I click on this button, the moment I click on this button, I just want to change my title. My requirement is the moment I click on this button, I want to change my title. Okay. So let's go to our component, to our code. Now here I have a class component. Let me just go back there and just check. This is my class component. Okay. Let me remove this import statement. I have created a class component. Okay. Inside that I have defined one constructor. And here I have created the state. In that state, I have just one property called title. And right now here, let's suppose I'm adding some content here. Okay. My first title. Okay. Now this inside our H2, I'm rendering my title, and I have this paragraph, and apart from that, I have just one button. The moment I click on this button, I'm calling the function update title, and inside this update title, I will remove this alert, and here I am simply updating my state. Now I will go to the app.js. Okay, let's assume that here I'm just rendering the class component without any props right now. So the moment I go back here to my browser, Now here, see, I got the first title and I have one paragraph, one button. The moment I click on this button, my title will get changed. Okay. So the moment my component loads, I got here first title. The moment I click on this, I got title changed. Okay. This is what the our component is. Now this is our class component. So in this class component, now I will define all these 4 life cycle methods. Okay. I'm going to define all these 4 life cycle method. I will define all these 4 life cycle methods. Now I will come back here. And these are the 4 life cycle methods which I have defined here. Okay. So I hope you got it. Okay. Now let's see whether this method will be triggered in the sequence or not. So I want to define all these 4 life cycle methods inside my component. So let's go that. So let's go to the class component. Now here already constructor is created, but here I will just add one console.log so that we can understand constructor is called. So I will say constructor is called. Okay, now I am confident that it will be the first function, so I'm writing one here. Now here, or else let me just remove that. Now next is I'm defining here component did mount. Okay, as I have told you, I can define my lifecycle methods in any sequence. So here simply I'm writing console.log, and here I'm saying that component did mount is called. Here component did mount is called. Okay, I have render here. So inside this render also I will add one console.log, and I will say render is called. Render is called. In the same way, now here I will have static get derived state from props. Okay, now it will take 2 parameters. One is first parameter will be always props, second parameter will be always state. So you will have the access of state and props inside this method using these parameters. Now this method should return some object or it should return null. So basically I'm returning here null by default. And here I'm just adding a console.log. And here simply I'm copying this function. And here I'm simply saying that get derived state. Here I'll just copy this. I will say get derived state is. Okay, right now I'm doing just as much. Now first, our first step is, let's see whenever this component renders, in which sequence these methods will be called. So here I have constructor now. I have component did mount. Then I have get derived state from props, and I have render. Okay, so let's try that. So I will just go back to my inspect, go to the console. I will clear all this right now. In the console, I will just clear all this. And the moment I refresh, now see, first constructor is called. Then get derived state from props is called, render is called, component did mount. See, the moment I refresh it, again, they will be called in the sequence only. You can define in any sequence, like if I want, I can just remove from here and I can define this before the constructor if I want. Like before the constructor, I can define that. But the moment I refresh, all will be called in that sequence only. So first we understood there are 4 lifecycle methods. If you define those methods, then only those will be called. Let's assume that you did not define component did mount. I will comment this. If I don't define, that lifecycle method will not be called. That's it. If you did not define, those will not be called. Only thing will be called. So if you define, those will be called in the sequence, or else if you did not define, those will not be called. Now, what is the purpose of constructor? To initialize the state. What is the purpose of get derived state from props? The purpose of this function is to update your state based on props value. To update your state based on props value. Render is for creating user interface, and component did mount is all about your side effects. Basically, we do your network calls. So you can write your Axios logic inside component did mount. So whenever your component is mounted without doing any kind of actions, if you want to perform network calls, then those logic you can implement here. It's very similar to our use effect hook. Okay, so that is the thing. Now, let me explain you this part because component did mount is very clear. We can do directly a side effects there. Constructor is very clear. So let me just explain about it. Now, let's assume that I am rendering class demo component multiple times. Okay, now let's assume that in my app.js, I'm rendering this class demo multiple times. Now, if I'm rendering this component multiple times, then in both the times, it is displaying the title as first title. But my requirement is, I want here some other title, I want here some other title. It means my title should be displayed in different way. So in that case, what we will do, we can just take the help of props. So here in our H2, instead of getting the data from state, we'll get the data from props. And if I go back to the app.js, now here I can add a props called title. And here I can say something like Rockstar. And here I can have one more title called Superstar. The moment I go back here, now see here I got Rockstar, here I got Superstar. Okay, fine. But now my requirement is the moment I click on this change title, I want this title should get changed. Okay, instead of Rockstar, I want some other title here. In the same way, if I click on this button also, I want some other part here. I want something else here. Now the question is how? Because now inside this H2, we are rendering the data from our props. So the moment I click on this button, I'm not getting that. But if I render data in this H2 from state, then my title will change. Now see, the moment I click on this, title are changing. But if I render the data in H2, or if I bind the data in H2 from my props, then I'm not able to update. So in that case, what I want to do, whenever my component is in the mount phase, I want to update my state using my props value. So for that, what I will do, initially my state I will define with null. And here I will return, instead of returning null, I will return props. Okay, now I will remove this console.log. So in the get derived state from props, I'm just returning the props. So props is nothing but one object, right? Props is one object in which we have a title. Now this object will be replaced, or this object will be replaced here. So in your state also, we have an object in which we have property called title, but whose value is null. In props also, we have a property title and there will be some value. So this object is going to replace here. So who will replace this? This get derived state from props window. So from here, whatever you will return, if you are returning one object, that object will be replaced here. Okay. So in this case, now see, the moment I save it, and if I go back here, and if I do here state, the moment I do here state, I will get the same result, Rockstar, Superstar. Suppose if I'm not returning here props, I'm returning null. In that case, nothing will be displayed on the screen. Nothing is displayed. Why? Because our state is null. But the moment you say props, now see, here it is displayed. Okay. Now, the moment, now see, in our H2 also, we are binding the data from this state. It means now if I click on this button, my state will get updated. And in that case, now my title should get updated. Okay. Now see, if I click on this, but still my title is not getting updated. Now why my title is not getting updated? because in my H2, now I'm binding the data from state, but still, if I click on this button, my title is not getting updated. Why? That's because this function, static get derived state from props, will be called in update phase also. In update phase also. So once your component enters into update phase, once your component enters into update phase, then during this phase also, there are some lifecycle methods which will be triggered. The first lifecycle method which will be triggered is static get derived state from props. This is the method which will be triggered. Then should component update. This function will be triggered. This method will be triggered. So first it will trigger get derived state from props, then should component update. If you define this method will be triggered in your update phase when your component is in the update phase. And this method should return true or false. It should return true or false. It's mandatory to return true or false from this method. So when to return true, when to return false, I will tell you. Next, render will be called. Then there is one more function, get snapshot before update will be called. And then should component update. No, not should component update, did component update will be called. Did component update will be called. Okay, remember this is a did component update. There was did component mount. So these are the 5 lifecycle methods which will be called whenever your component is in your update phase, and it will be called in this sequence only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It means this get derived state from props is calling in update phase also. So whenever your component is getting update, again this is called. So moment it is called, again you're returning props. Props is nothing but you have that rockstar superstar. That's why you are not able to see any changes on the screen. So what we can do here now? Now we want to return props only in the mount phase. So here I can write one condition. What is that condition I can write here is, I can say if my state dot title is equals to null. It means when our state will be null, it will be in the mount phase. Then return props. Or else if state dot title is not null, in that case return null. Just return null. Null will not be get updated in this state. So now the moment I click on this, I got my title updated to class component. My title got updated to the class component. Okay. So this is how your get derived state from props will be used to update your state, to update our state based on props value. So we can update our state based on our props value, or we can update our state with props. This is the get derived state. Now let's say in update phase, how our lifecycle methods will be called. So here I will comment this part. Uncomment this part. And here I will define some more functions. First, should component update. It should return true. So right now I'm returning true. Here I will add console.log. And here simply I will say should component update is called. Second is, here I will use component did update. Component did update. Okay, component did update, right? So here it was component did mount. Okay, here I just wrote the wrong function name. It should be component did update. Okay, let me just remove this part. Okay, here it should be component did update. I wrote wrong method name. So here it should be component did update. component did update, and here C should be capital, and here it should be update. If I come back, here I'm adding console.log, and here I'm saying component did update is called. Okay, component did update is called. Now we have one more here, get snapshot before update. Here also I will add console.log of get snapshot before update. Yes, called. So first let's see in which sequences those all are called. So whatever sequence I have written, they will be called in this sequence only, but let's see whether they are called in this sequence or not. Okay, now when this methods will be triggered once our component enters into update phase. So let me just right click, go to the inspect. Let me go to the console part. Let me clear all this. Now I will refresh. Whenever I have refreshed, now my component is in the mount phase. Okay, my component is in the mount phase. Now see here we got constructor, we have got get derived state from props, we have got render, and we got the same thing. Now why 2 times we got here? Because we are calling the components 2 times. Okay, now just not to get confused. So here I will just render this only one time. Now you will get only one time here. Okay, let me clear all this. Let me refresh. The moment I refresh, now see I just got in one sequence only. Now if I want, I can just uncomment that component did mount as well. Uncomment this component did mount. So all the lifecycle method will be called. So the moment I refresh, now see whenever my component is in the mount phase, right now my component is in the mount phase. So constructor is called, get derived state from props is called, render is called, component did mount is called. Now when our component will enter into update phase, if you update your state or props. So the moment I click on this button, my state will get updated. It means my component will enter into update phase. The moment my component enters into update phase, now see here, get derived state from props is called first, then should component update is called, then render is called, then get snapshot before update is called, then component did update is called. Update is called. So this warning message, if you want to return remove, then simply return null from that get snapshot before update. So from here, you can return null. So let me just try again. So whenever I refresh, my component is in the mount phase. I got this. The moment I click on change title, I got get derived state from props. Should component render get snapshot before component did update. One more time. The moment my component is in the mount phase, now I have refreshed. Whenever my component is in the mount phase, these are the 4 lifecycle methods called in the sequence. The moment I click on this button, now here see my title got updated. My component is in update phase. In this update phase, these are the lifecycle methods which are called. Now, what is the purpose of this lifecycle methods? Same. Static get derived state from props purpose is same, updating the state based on props. Now, should component update? Here you will have the access of your current state and previous state. You will have the access of your current state and previous state with the parameters. And if you want, you can compare your current state and the previous state. And if they both are same, then return false. If they are different, then you return true. So when we have to return true, if our new state and our old state are same, then return false. If they are different, then return true. Okay. So if you return true from this should component update, then remaining next lifecycle methods will be called. If you are returning false, then next lifecycle methods will not be called. Okay, let's see here. Suppose in this should component update, I am returning false. The moment I return false, the next lifecycle method that is rendered, that is your render get snapshot before update component did update will not be called. So the purpose of this lifecycle method is to compare our new state with the old state. If new state and old state are same, if the state is not changing, then why to call this render get snapshot before and component did update? Okay, if your state are different, then only you have to call this remaining life cycle method. So how we can restrict that part? Just by returning true or false. So the moment I make it false, now see here, I will clear all this. Now moment I click on this, only two life cycle methods are called. See here, the moment I change it, only two life cycle methods are called in the update phase. So that is the benefit. But if you make it true, then all the life cycle methods will be called. Okay, so it is used to check or compare your previous state and current state. Now, how you will able to compare here? So here you will have the previous state and next state. Previous state and next state comparison. So let me just check life cycle methods. If I'm just using light parameters or not, life cycle methods in React.js. So we will go to the official documentation. And here, if I just scroll down, somewhere I should be able to find here. Now here, if I just scroll down, here constructor, here all the informations they have given, component did mount, component did update. And if I go back here, somewhere I should be able to find it. Yeah, now here see we got next props and next state. Okay, it's a next props and next state. So here it should be next props and next state. You will have the access of next props and next state. Means next props and next state. So you can compare this props and state. If props and state are not changing, then why to call this render get snapshot before and component data update? In that case, you can return false. If not, you can return true. You can return true. Okay, so here next sets. Here you can say not previous state. Here it should be next props. And here next state. So in our case, what is next state? The next state is this part. This title updated. This is the next state. What is the current state? Current state is your rockstar. Current state is your rockstar. In the same way, if I scroll down, you will go to the get snapshot before update. Yeah, here you will have the previous props and previous state. Previous props and previous state. So in get snapshot before, yeah, here you will have the access to, like once your state got updated. So what was your previous props and previous state? That access you will have here. That access you will have here. So let's suppose you have updated your state, but somehow you want previous state data so that you can do some kind of operations or actions. Then that previous state, once your state got updated, then what was your previous state? How you will get that access? That access you will get inside this lifecycle method. And with that state, whatever actions you want to perform, you can perform. Whatever option you want to perform, you can perform. Okay, so here, this is how the lifecycle methods of update phase. First, get derived state from props. It is used to update your state based on props value. Should component update here, you can compare your what will be the next props and current props, next state and current state. And if they are same, then return false. If they are different, return true. Render is same. It is used for JSX. I mean, creating the UI. Get snapshot before update. Now here, once your state get updated, now what was your previous old state? And what was your old props? So that old props and old state access you will get here. Here, before updating this state. Here, after updating this state. Before updating this state. So what is your next state? Like basically what state, what value you are going to get updated in this state? Here, once your state got updated. So what was your previous state? So that is the difference. Next is component did update. Here again, you can perform the side effects. It's all about side effects. So if your component is in the update phase and if you want to perform side effects, then those side effects you can perform here. And these are the lifecycle methods which you will find in the update phase. Next one is your unmount phase. Now in unmount phase, before our component enters into unmount phase, nothing but before our component code is removed from the DOM, before it is removed from the DOM, one lifecycle method will be triggered. That is component did unmount. Sorry, component will unmount. So component will unmount will be called once our component is removed from the DOM. So once your component is removed, or before your component is removing, if you want to perform some kind of side effects, those side effects you can perform here. Those side effects you can perform here. Component will unmount. So that is the only one lifecycle method we have in the unmount phase. So if you want more information about it, so I will just add this in our videos.txt. Okay, here I will add that. I will be adding here. Okay, you can just go through this link. You will find all the information about lifecycle methods. Okay, that's it, guys. Now if I come back here, so this is about all your lifecycle methods.